Warren,
Hey, Peter.
how are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you? Sorry, I was waiting for a call and then I remembered it was Zoom.
Not a worry, not a worry. Um, uh, yeah, it's hard to keep track of this shit.
I would have put my Gene Simmons makeup on for you if I'd known it was a Zoom interview.
I'm quite hurt that you didn't actually, but
I didn't know it was either Gene or Peter Chris or Ace Frehley. I wasn't sure. Fucking Ace Frehley's is really complicated to put on.
I once interviewed Gene Simmons in a hotel room in London, but the day before, I stepped out of a lift and was surrounded by all four of them in full war paint and stack heels in a hotel hallway. It was simultaneously one of the most terrifying and thrilling moments of my life.
When was that? What era?
Oh, Jesus, it was late enough. It was about 10 years ago. So,
Oh, okay. So this wasn't like classic, like hotter than hell period or like dynasty or something like that.
Jesus, how old do you think I am, Warren? Give me a break here.
Oh, I don't know, man. I thought maybe you're a kid. I mean, I stepped onto a plane with all of AC/DC in 2003, and that was fucking good enough for me.
Yeah, that'll do it. Here, uh, congratulations on your opus.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very encouraging.
What a beautiful artifact it is. I always
it's lovely to hear you describe it like that.
I always thought you would have had a book in you, or I remember somewhere around about Lissard 1998 seeing the Dirty Three and running into you and thinking, this is maybe the only rock band, if you could call it thus, that I'd be interested in writing a book about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was something about the intensity of the band, and I thought, Jesus, I'd love to spend like 30 days with this band and just document it in real time.
Why didn't you do it?
Too much in my own way. I had to I had to sit on a nail for another few years before I realized.
Yeah, I understand it. It's funny that because you can have these ideas, and if you don't act on them, or you can't act on them, then, I mean, it's a bit like the story of this gum. For me, it's about ideas and acting on them whenever that may be,
Yeah.
Like, it's like, it feels to me like 20 years later, after I sort of pulled this gum out, that the story suddenly revealed itself. And ideas feel like that. They're just laying in wait, waiting to happen, whether it's immediate or later, that they still have the power to inspire whenever they appear, whenever they rear their head, kind of thing.
Yeah, you were always pretty good at jumping on them, and I know, like, I would say probably the chief characteristic of yours and Nick's relationship now is the essence of jumping on those ideas.
It's about working. It's about like engaging in the creative act, and it's about making it happen. And it seems to have ramped up over the years as as our sort of collaboration became more and more fruitful, and also, just more and more exciting and more and more inspiring. It's just been obvious that we've never even spoken about it, but it's been obvious that we need to act on it, because when you start playing with people, that sort of thing doesn't happen very often, and you have to nurture it. And like that, like when you get a band like Crazy Horse or AC/DC, or when you get these bands that just kind of do something straight away, like that, it's not just anything that can happen for anybody, if you know what I mean. Like, it's really it's that powerful thing about the band that works, this sort of collaborative process that goes beyond that. It's like you put 5 different people in a room and nothing happens, that play the same things. There's just something that the desire has to be there, and the kind of the hunger, has to be there.
But not to
But
get
it's been
off.
it's been interesting though with Nick and me, because it was something that has, as far as I can see, it's gotten better with age, you know, and that's not often the case. It's still really engaging, and it still feels like we're taking risk, and we're still pushing each other as far as we can go. And there's a sort of sense of trust that allows us to take whatever risk that needs to be taken, you know, in order to break new ground, or feel like we're moving in hopefully a forward direction.
There was something crucial you said, either in the text of the book or in an interview recently, where it was to do with having, well, confidence is a big part of it, but also to hold your nerve and not snuff out a bad idea before it turns into a good one.
Yeah, I actually I'm one of these people who won't let an idea go if I feel like I've felt something that's worth pursuing with it. And you know, there's some songs that I'll just hang on until somebody grabs me and says, like, hey, maybe it's just not a good idea. And sometimes and you know, and sometimes they're right, and then 5 years later, you know, I pull it out again and find a way to make it work in a satisfying way. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, from my experience has been like, when you go into work in the studio with people, there's ideas that you just think are surefire and they're going to work, and they're generally the ones that don't work. And then it's these other ones that require help, and that can be the tiniest of an idea, and then they suddenly grow to something else with people getting underneath them and giving them, you know, like flight. And they're the ones that you kind of remember, like, wow, that just came from this, you know, tiny little thing and become this great big idea. They're the things I really remember in the studio, you know. I mean, the book was a bit like that, because I when Dan first approached me from Faber, Dan, you know, he said, you know, I think you've got something to say, and I wasn't entirely convinced. And he'd seen a concert of Dirty Three in the early 2000s and was sort of really liked the way I could just sort of make a story up on the seemingly off the cuff, you know.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, to be able to do that, which I just was able to get a few ideas and thread them together, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but it required taking a risk, because you were really in a moment. I really liked that, because it could just fall really flat, or it could just go somewhere that was even surprised yourself at the end. And a lot of it was based around comic, and actually started because back when I started with Dirty Three, I'd had this fuck day, and my girlfriend at the time had tried to kill herself and all this stuff. And I think it was about like gig number 3 of the Dirty Three or something, you know. And like I kind of got down there, didn't really feel like really being there. So I was like, you know, fuck, you wouldn't believe the day I've had. And so I just started kind of talking about this day that I'd had, you know, like finding a girlfriend, you know, pool of blood and all that stuff. And everybody was laughing, you know, and they just kind of thought I was like making it up. And actually, you know, I think I realized then that the sort of comic aspect of the whole thing, you know, I don't know, there was something about it that then sort of made me can just do that in the show, you know. For some reason. But when Dan approached me, you know, I have to, you know, I wasn't really sure that I had anything to say. And then I told him about this sort of thing that was happening in front of me with the gum. And I thought it was a sort of picture book, and with a bit of text from me, you know, because, you know, I haven't written anything ever. And I was filled with a lot of anxiety about it, you know, because I was, I guess, stepping into a really unfamiliar world. music is still incredibly unfamiliar to me. Like, and I like that. I like that it still remains a mystery to me. And the day that it isn't a mystery, then it feels like that's when I should open up the fish and chip shop or something, you know, and do something else. Like I need to maintain a healthy kind of deference to the process and kind of look up to it, as opposed to feeling like I've got it under wraps. And I've just always been like that. And it served me well in terms of, I think, my radar of what I feel is going somewhere and what isn't, you know, and taking risks. I think it's allowed me to take risks. But the writing thing was a whole new scary world, because it was you know, like a concrete format that was there, and I noticed as it was going down, like it was there. And I know that people have I think there's more people who have a better relationship to the written word than music. They have a vocabulary. They can say, oh, this is crap writing, or this is shit, what are they trying to say, or this is great. Music is so kind of it's like an involuntary act. It communicates. I'm not talking lyrical music, but I'm talking like music, just instrumental music. You either know if you like it or you don't, you know, like, and you base it on emotion, or you base it on how it moves you. But writing, you know, because we don't really have a language, it's just like purely. In a way, it operates on a spiritual level or something, you know, music. It can be that powerful. And writing, I think there's more people who have the basic mechanics, you know, to sort of judge something. And I guess I felt a bit like the actor picking up a guitar and saying, hey, here's my new record, you know.
Yeah.
And I felt, and it had this sort of a lot of anxiety around it. And Dan was really fantastic for that, because, you know, it sort of, what I'm saying is connected to what you're asking. When you're in the studio, you need these people that support ideas and what you're trying to do, because you realize in the studio that you can shut somebody down really quickly with the wrong message. Mm-hmm. And and being so vulnerable in this writing process, for me, Dan was amazing like that he gave me the right amount of encouragement and the right amount of criticism in order to keep going on with it, so that it just didn't shut me down, you know. And particularly stepping into a world that, you know, I really had no experience beyond texts and emails. And, you know, the odd shot, I tried to write poems until, like, I guess when I left Australia, but my sort of speed freak girlfriend, and when I left Australia, just threw the whole box in the bin and did the kind of literary world a great service. You know, it was just the sort of moanings of a 20-something-year-old, you know, guy, and you know, she did the world a favor and threw that into Skip. But you know, I really actually appreciate the fact that Dan kind of supported me in such a kind of great way, because when you're feeling that vulnerable in the process, it would have been so easy to shut me down.
Well, I think there's a couple of things in there. One of the things that always blows me away about writing is you could have the best concept or the best idea or the best theme in the world, but the older I get, the more I realize that actual writing is a performance. You don't know you don't know what you have until you're actually writing, or until it's been written. So the outline or the synopsis or whatever, it does, you know, I teach creative writing, and sometimes you get guys coming up to you in a bar going, oh, you're a writer, I have a great story for you. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it, because you don't know until it's written whether it's any good or not. And it might be so integral to your voice or your experience that nobody else can write it. So what I loved about your book is, like, well, it has two things. It has a subject that starts off seemingly kind of tongue-in-cheek or trivial, but as it emerges becomes a very profound idea. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But more importantly, it's your voice. So the writing is polished and full of substance, but it's scuffed in the right way. It doesn't try to be formal.
Yeah. I think that Faber were great in that respect, that they let me keep my voice and my attempts to write, you know, like my way of actually, you know, if you saw the first draft of what I handed in, it was like a way of trying to write something, you know, like I didn't really know how. So I had like kind of 400 pictures, and I had quotes and things that I'd chopped out of places, and I sort of had like a storyboard in a way, you know, for what I thought. But then actually what I thought it was about, by the time I'd got to the finished book, I was totally wrong what I thought it was about. And it became about something else, you know, the process of trying to find what it was. You know, I mean, for me, seriously, when I went into it, I thought like 95% of it is the images and the text. Like Nick had offered to write the intro, and I thought, okay, that takes care of a certain amount of writing. And then I thought I got about 10 pages to write, and then boom, you know, that's it. And when I actually finished it, it was actually, you know, I never thought the text would in any way compete with the narrative of the photos, you know. And it was only through digging with, it was actually Warren who sort of started interviewing me, because I was so blocked with the whole process. And he just said to me, Warren Moverman said, "You think this is about the chewing gum, but it's not, Warren. It's about you. Like, you're the only person in that room of 2,000 people that took it, that took care of it, that thought to do." And I'm like, I can't see this. And he goes, I know you can't see this, but that's what it's about. It's about you. Like, why do you care? And that was, I fought against that because, you know, I mean, I told Dan from the outset, like when he asked me about writing something, I said, look, I'm not interested in a memoir because personally I don't find my journey interesting, and I think there's way better stories that aren't being told by people, you know, and I don't find my story of particular interest. And weirdly, I ended up writing a strangely fragmented kind of memoir of sorts that allowed me, I guess, to connect an importance to the gum and the kind why I did it, sort of thing. Or I guess looking deeper, I needed to look at why it meant so much to me. But you know, Oren totally like made me dig further than I would have, you know, like, and it was interesting to see that what my idea of what I thought it was about shifted so much from this, you know, from the initial, you know, I presented it in a sort of 45-minute kind of pitch, you know, to a couple of people at Faber. I hadn't written a word, you know. I just sat around a table. I just thought that's how you presented a book. So I told them the story and showed them the gum, and Alexa just welled up in tears when she saw it, you know, and she's like, oh my God, like this. And, you know, I kept having these profound moments with the gum and that, but yeah, I didn't really have any clue beyond that, like how to write it.
I would say, I would venture that if you don't have that process of discovery, it's going to be dead on the page. In other words,
yeah.
If you know what you're doing, it's going to be no good in some fashion.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because I got to a point with it where I thought, oh my God, you know, like I'm just not saying anything. So I started trying to open it up and say profound things, you know, and anytime I did that, anytime I tried to force the language to become like, you know, important or something, it was so flat on the page, you know. I ended up chopping it all out, you know. I had sort of chapters that I chopped out that Dan was going like, this deserves its own book, you know, like you're getting off the track here and stuff like that. But I realized that what I was seeing, the effect of the people that this little bit of gum, how it moved them. People needed to read the book and read that themselves, you know, not me saying, and that, you know, this is what it is, this is it. Because I'm just not that sort of person, you know. I can't express things in a kind of intellectual way, or not intellectual, but like, you know, like write about something simple in a kind of big way. And I realized that actually the simplicity of what I was doing was the key to it. You know, like my writing is very simple. My son's girlfriend is French and hardly speaks any English, but she's like read half of it already, and she said, "I totally understand it," which was fantastic.
Well, you know, I don't think William Blake ever used a 3-syllable word.
Exactly. Exactly.
Songs of Innocence and Experience can be read by a child, but that doesn't mean that the ideas are not massive and profound.
Well, I would love that this book was read by kids. Like, I think it's why, it was why when I put the image of me and my brothers near the end.
Yeah.
And the call with my brother who, you know, I didn't want to go into it in the book, but, you know, my older brother and I at 15, when he was 15, he just kind of left the house in a fucking blaze of glory, you know, like he was gone. And it fractured something within the family, you know, and where the fault lies doesn't matter. But this actual idea of, I think, reaching out to him and seeing him, you know, like seeing him as that kid again, that older brother I needed. Hang on. This kind of older brother that I guess needed, you know, and he was there in some way. That this little act that I'd done, if it's all its purpose was to reconnect with that guy, then that was a beautiful thing. It was funny because it got to a point where the narrative was just with it, where after I had the sort of initial idea out, the narrative was coming as the sort of gum entered the world. And as I thought about it, you know, this story, I mean, it's continued on, you know, like, I mean, I've kind of like already like Faber have a copy of it. It's going in the archives with Sylvia Plath's text manuscripts, you know, I mean, it's so beautiful. I mean, it's like so beautiful. And Ted Hughes' text and stuff, they're like, it's going in the archives, you know, what an honor to have this. They have one of the copies I gave them for taking care of the story for me, you know. I bought some land and donated it to some people in Sumatra, and we're building a park for animals with special needs.
I've been following on Instagram. Yeah, Ellis Park looks amazing. So
I'm going to go there next year, and I'm going to build a big, like, fucking 6-foot kind of sculpture of Nina Simone's Gum in Stone and stick it in a pond so the bears and the monkeys can play on it. And then down the track, I'll build a shack there and go there, get back on the gear and go out in a blaze of glory, feeding the armless monkeys and the toothless bears. And they can, we're building a cemetery there for the kind of the little ones that don't make it through and the ones that never leave. So, you know, they can roll me in there and put a coconut tree on me in my autumnal years. That's
about as biblical. That's about as Saint Francis of Assisi as it gets. Saint Francis of Assisi, only psychedelic. But come to think of it, Saint Francis was pretty psychedelic in the first place. But
the Bible's pretty psychedelic. Fucking hell.
Yeah, but so this line kept coming back to me as I was reading it, and it's from the Mercy Seat. It's just that phrase, objects and their fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about that phrase a lot because I look around my own house and I have there's all these things that had no great significance 20 years ago that have never taken on the weight of religious artifact because they belong to my late parents or my late brother or people that I've known.
Yeah.
Gone. So it's like, or even like interview cassettes with Lou Reed or Anthony Bourdain, like that. And I'm starting to realize it's probably an age thing, but in part it is, but they change at some point into artifacts. These things, even if they're personal things, they're cultural things, and a personal thing, like you say, your parents, that outside of your orbit, they don't have the same impact, but it changes at a point, you know. The there's an aspect of the book which is connected to the objects. I think maybe the fields, the objects in their fields, is the idea of maybe taking on the residue of the spirit of the person who's gone. It's a way of maybe housing a bit of their spirit in your house where you live. You know, if you own somebody's records who's died on you, and you take on the records, you clear their head, you sort through the artifacts, you keep what is valuable, you let go what is not. But there are all these testimonials throughout the book of, you know, initially, of course, it's Nina Simone herself, but then there's Mick Geyer and there's David McCullough and even people like Matt Crosby who are still around. But the book serves kind of an oral. There's many voices in there, and it serves a really useful oral history purpose. I mean, it's brilliant to read Matt Crosby's email about his.
It's fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's like it's as down to earth and no bullshit as only, you know, a mixing engineer's testimony can be. Yeah, but it's also a perspective that nobody else will ever have of the woman and her.
Well, it sort of required, there was sort of detective work, you know, like that. I wanted to get people who'd witnessed certain things about it and trying to find as much as I could, you know, around the day and stuff like that. Because as the gum sort of had grown to this status of a holy relic, I wanted to treat everything around it as such, you know. So these were acts, you know, and where it had been kept and, you know, what I'd done with it. They were all significant steps to kind of securing this holy relic, you know, and the safekeeping of it. And I think I really loved that. I had several chats with Matt Crosby, you know. I mean, I call him, we speak regularly, depending on how pissed he is how long they can go for. But sometimes I have to kind of, I'm like almost in danger of having a heart attack from laughing so much with Matt, you know. Like, it's a sort of 25-year relationship that I have with Matt that is probably like one of the greatest storytellers that I know, you know. Like, he has a memory like Shane McGowan when it comes to like details that you just think he's so out of it. There's no way that he'd remember, and then they just sort of tell you this thing, you're like, fuck, how can you remember that, you know?
Yeah.
Matt's amazing like that. I think you know, I wanted to treat everyone in there, and also like my relationship with Nick, I think in there too, that it's a kind of a generous look at, you know, there's something about the way that's portrayed that's way more generous than an interview. Like, so how did you guys record Jesse James, or, you know, what happened when you did Ghosteen? Like, I think there's a lot more that's unsaid in our relationship that, you know, that around what I talk about. I realized that when I'd finished it.
I think there's an aspect of, like, it never fails to amaze me how, you know, as untidy as the rest of us, you know, great artists' lives are. Not necessarily chaotic, just, you know, as hard to, you know, the idea of, like, you know, Nick falling off the stage in Iceland, and, you know, there's got to be a doctor, you know, and then you find out that he played Glastonbury the next day with fractured vertebrae. There's a wonderful photograph and quite a moving moment where it's during rehearsals for the Skeleton Tree tour, and it's in Melbourne, and you describe it as kind of, it's during Tupelo, and you describe it as the moment where Nick sort of re-enters his body after suspended.
I get like shivers talking about it, because it was like, you know, clearly such a sort of a moment. Nobody knew what was going to happen with him after Arthur died, and I'd been with him in the studio working on soundtracks and things like that prior to that, but there was something incredibly, you know, spiritual about that moment, because I saw him and I took it, you know, like I just took the picture, because I was like, he's going to be okay, you know, like I hadn't seen that, you know, for 18 months since his son had died, and I'd seen aspects of him, and I'd seen a new thing develop with him. But it also, because it was like when he did Tupelo, and Tupelo was the song when he kind of, got up off the stage and kind of started playing Tupelo at the piano, like this sort of transformative power of the song, like how Nina Simone, just the transformative power of the song with her. Hang on, mate. I just need to go and can you wait there? I just got to go and grab a charger and plug in.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time.
Don't go anywhere.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
You there?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Juiced up. There was I remember Nick saying something, I think it might have been in Once More with Feeling or somewhere, where he talked about you in the aftermath of Arthur's death. And it's very hard to know how to be around people when they're grieving. It's obviously incredibly delicate and heavy. But he said you were just there. It was like you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to say anything. It was just your presence was there. And that was enough to know, almost like you provided some sort of continuity amidst the chaos. That's pretty deep. Never mind musicians, but that's pretty deep as far as friends get.
Well, there's a lot of things in life you don't really know if you have no reference for them. You don't, like something like that. I had no reference at all. But all I knew was to say. All I knew was to say to Nick, tell me what you want. Tell me what you need. If you know what it is, and I'm there, because I knew no amount of trying to work out what was going on, or I don't know. I had no words or anything, for what was happening to him and his family. But I guess the fact that, our relationship, like we sit in the room and we make this music together and don't talk, we just sit there and this thing that happens is like something that doesn't happen in a conversational talk or whatever, like, I don't know how we're connected, creatively or collaboratively. I don't really know what the connection is, but I know it's something I don't get anywhere else, like I know that there's this thing that goes on between us and I don't ask any questions in the hope that it will continue. And I guess there's some things we don't need to talk about as a result of that, because sure. I don't know, it's like when you experience a certain thing and that there's some stuff that just doesn't touch it, and I guess in that instant, when Arthur died, he knew that I was there. And he's like, I want to try and finish the record. And I just said, dude, I'm there, like, fuck, I'm your man, like, I guess, like we just do what we can in those situations, and some people are good in maybe explaining what's going on or guiding people through a process like that. But for me, it felt like whatever way I could facilitate the creative process for him, which is something that he's just done all his life. If he wanted to engage in it, then I love Nick to pieces. Like he's, I love the guy enormously. but you know, I think the creative process for him, you know, I thought if there's any way I can help him get back into that, you know, then that's what I should do, you know.
As you speak there, it reminds me of my late elder brother. You know, the relationship was non-verbal. It was always bovine. It reminded me of cows in a stall. You know,
Right.
because you know you're just around. You're just eating out of the trough. You know, there's almost a herd or a herd-like instinct. To complete the thought,
it's the strangest thing, Death, because you know life will go on, like in some way, and it's changed irreversibly, but you know it also will go on. So there's this sort of surreal aspect of like there's a lot of things that are still the same, and then there's stuff that isn't, you know. I'm just talking about like a death in general, like, you know, that if you can step outside of it, that most 99% of the things are still going on. Like you say, like the cows just sitting around, it's all sort of going on. But then there's this thing that's happened that's kind of changed aspects of it. It's such a strange, it's a strange thing because it's the thing that we're aware of, that we know, it makes us aware that we have a life, you know.
there was a wonderful, there's never any closure with this stuff, but there was a wonderful moment during the Bad Seed show in Kilmainham in Dublin, about a year and a half into the Skeleton Tree tour. And I just remember looking around at me and spotting people who I'd known for 20 years who were at the St. Francis Xavier Hall show in 1991. And it's in the middle of like From Her to Eternity. And feels like there's about 30,000 people there. And we're all looking at each other going, how the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things.
That's not a question other than just a moment to mark.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful. What I did,
I had that when my book got sent to me, and I kind of looked at it, this sort of thing that I've had in my head suddenly in my hand, and then someone else was holding it. And I was like, how the fuck did that happen? You know, like it was really, I was like, fuck, like I knew what I was working towards, but, you know, it still sort of astounds me that I sort of see it and I go, wow. And then I was reading it the other day, you know, I went away and they were reading it, and it was sort of very strange, very different feeling to somebody like, you know, holding a record or something. This was like something I've never experienced in my life, you know. There was this thing with my name on it, and I was like, fuck, exactly, how the fuck did that happen, you know? Like, I know what went into it, but it sort of astounds me. For me, actually, the thing with the book is that I'm kind of proud of myself that I got through to the end of the process, you know, and a process that was with the framework like Faber has, who, you know, the feedback was based on what I was doing, not who I am, you know, like It was like, and that I really respected that, you know. I found that really, that was really important. And it was Nick, you know, I was so sort of like anxious about it all, and Nick just goes, well, what are they saying to you? And I said, well, it's really encouraging at the moment. He goes, listen to them, that's their job, you know. They're not there to fucking heap praise on you. They're there to tell you what they think of it. Really, they're professional people, Warren, you know. Which was good advice, because I felt it was funny, you know, because I literally sat here where I am now, just in the couch. It was during lockdown, and wrote it in my studio, which is a sort of concrete brick fucking shed in the back of the garden. And there were days I would like sit there and nothing would happen, and then there'd be days where I sort of look up and the sun had gone down, and I'd experience what I would have in the studio trying to make a record or something, or just jamming, where suddenly they're like, Warren, we're closing the door. It's like 10 o'clock, you know, and literally a whole 12 hours had gone by. And aside from eating a sandwich, you know, like I don't even know what fucking time it is, you know. And I found myself on occasions like that in the process, you know, of writing this. And then days where just nothing would happen, you know.
I know there are times when the process can drive a person insane, but I think those hours that you described there are maybe the sanest moments a person ever has, because it allows you to leave your own body and your own self-obsession and your own consciousness. And it's just a blessed relief because you're not in yourself at all.
Well, you know, it's something I think when you're say performing, it's something I think you're kind of spoilt with really young. It's like when you take drugs, you know, you just think, fuck, you take speed the first time, everything just makes sense. The whole world makes sense. And you're like, I get it. You know, I was like, whoa, and it never happens again, except for the first couple of times. But you know, I remember the first show that I did, the first concert I played with, you know, when I plugged a pickup on my violin and just turned the volume up and clicked on a distortion pedal. I literally never felt anything like that in my life. And I've chased that ever since, you know, and it sounds cliched, but it's the truth, you know, and you know, the moments on stage are sacred, you know, and there's this sort of thing that happens, you know, like, and I see this now, you know, having been in Dirty Three and the Bad Seeds for 30, 25 years kind of thing, you know. There's guys I'm watching getting older, and we get out there and it's the same sort of thing going on, you know, like this feeling that happens, you know, and on a good night, it's just like nothing else on earth. And there's this, it's you know, it's this sort of strange meditative state that happens, you know, that you're kind of not really aware of what's, of anything else. And if something else can actually come in and enter that, then you realize you've got problems in your life. But most of the time, whatever's going on in your life, you just get up there and it's gone, you know, like, and so I think as musicians for performance and stuff, we're kind of spoiled, I think, if you make your life out of that, because it's so kind of addictive, that state to be in. And it's like that state of writing or being in the studio. And I sort of I did TM for a while, and that to me felt like a similar sort of place that you get to with TM, that performing or creating engages this sort of similar state of mind. It's like fishing, when you're sitting fishing and you know it's time that doesn't really count on your kind of time tally. It's just sort of time apart. Or when you're out in the water for some reason, when I go into violin shops, it's a bit like that too. They just seem like this time stops when I go into them.
There was I went to see that film, The Quest.
Hey, have they made that bloody park for me at they need to put a bloody park in Whelan's. No, not Whelan's. Fuck, what's the place where they threw me out of there for playing the wrong tune?
O'Donoghue's.
Donahue's. I went in there on the last. I went in there on the last tour. Actually, the first time I'd stuck my bloody embarrassed little head in there. Well, I was in a hotel nearby, and we had a day off, so I kind of walked past there and went in there with Marty, I think, and Matt Crosby, and I was like, "Fuck!" and came back and conquered the joint. You know, like it was like so funny. I walked in and I looked at the corner where it all happened. You know, got the heebie-jeebies.
They need to put a plaque on the wall.
Yeah. This is where Warren Ellis fucked up.
This is where the banjo player gave Warren Ellis shit.
Man, I can remember that dude's face so well, and he's an incredible fiddle player. Like it was so sort of terrifying and moving. Like, yeah.
There is
make sure it's in like brass or something like that, you know.
Yeah, well, actually, you know, You need to put one of your gum replications.
Yeah, I'll stick one there. Put it. Yeah. I'll put it. I'll put a bit of gum there. Maybe they can like frame a book and stick it there, and
or perhaps the cast of your hands and remove everything but the middle fingers.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll make a special pair. I'll make a really big pair that can sit outside O'Donoghue's, and Phil Lynnett's statue will be smiling on the other side of town and be like, "That's the way, kid."
Yeah, they gave him the same shit. Okay. I'm not going to keep you much longer, Warren. You've been very generous.
I'm really happy you liked the book. Yeah, I have to say, Peter, that I've been, I have no expectations for the book, like in terms of like actually the act of finishing it for me, like I said, was kind of enough for me, but the fact that people have read it and so far, have engaged in it and responded to something in it is kind of more than I ever hoped for, and I mean that, totally sincerely, because, I really had no idea, what was going on with it. And I think even like from a point of view of how I did it, like you can see, I saw the screenshots of text as like artifacts, of like that I really wanted the story to be told by a lot of voices and in the most sort of relatable way so that people could read it. You could change tones. You see a text and then you have a different sense of like, wow, I'm in a private moment with these two people, because you know what a text is like. And you don't get that if I just printed it out, and an email and stuff like that, to have these sorts of things. And as I'm discovering things, I wanted people to feel that they were there with my process of discovery as it revealed itself. But you can also see that I'm trying to work out how to do something.
There's the book operates on different levels. It's not just about Nina Simone, although it makes you think about her differently. I went to see that film Summer of Love or Summer of Soul,
right?
And when it came to her sequence in it, it made me look at the way she struck the piano in a whole way. And I was just looking at the force and the fury with which she was with which she struck the piano, something I wouldn't necessarily have noticed unless I'd read the book. But there's also something really important about the process. And for me, there's a whole long sequence where it's your relationship with Hannah as she's going through the ordeal and the problem solving. And, very much like writing a book or making a record or being involved in the visual arts, something that is viewed as more a craft or an artisanal thing. You're just there suffering with her as she's trying to do the right thing, and do the right thing, and the seriousness with which she's invested in it, the seriousness with which everybody is invested in it once the thing is in process, is quite moving.
Well, that was that was the thing that moved me. Like I say in the book, to get these sort of people just putting so much care, that it wasn't just about being their job, like investing so much care into this. I mean, I found genuinely moving and humbling, like I was just like opening up these photos every day, and I was, my breath was being taken away by it, that people cared. And for me, I know I say this in the book, but it was like seeing something that I felt in the studio actually in front of me, like taking place, something I can't ever describe, that's sort of like something that just sort of happens, like the act of creation. And for me, it was about, the book is about ideas, collaboration, love and care being needed to help ideas, encouragement, and the kind of, I guess, the sort of, the kind of cosmic world, that nothing can actually push you to do everything kind of thing, that that what's important to us can be absolutely nothing and everything. You know, I even like, you know, the postcard of Dave's, I mean, you know, I didn't feel a need to go into a big history. But the book, you know, I wanted to write a book that was about awe and wonder, and that we can do beautiful things, that people can be fucking awesome, you know, that we do great things. And I had the poems of Marianne had read flying around in my head when the lockdown was happening, you know, and I didn't know if Marianne was going to die. And I was like listening to these texts, and there was all this rage machine kicking off, and Trump was fucking on fire, and like everyone was doing the wrong thing and no one knew what was right, and we were this and we were that. And I just kind of sat down. I thought, right, I want to write a book about the good of it all, you know. And so I chose to sort of, and as I didn't want to be you know, I didn't want to go on about, you know, just stories of you know, what, you know, being in a band and stuff like that. It's not about that at all, you know. But the you know, just something I don't know if I went into that much. The card of Dave's McComb sent me, that felt like the thing that kept me sober for 20 years. You know, that, and I know that simplifies a really complex kind of idea, and you go like, well, you know, how bad were you then? You know, but in all seriousness, knowing I had that card felt, that was what kind of kept me sober.
Sometimes those objects, those apparently inconsequential objects, are the thing that makes you keep your promise.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's exactly like, what it is.
Almost like a wedding ring or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Something happened. So, like quite a similar, just being reminded, objects reminding you of a vow you've taken. I'm just remembering. So I remember when 20,000 Days on Earth came out, right? And I put out a couple of books with Faber. One had done pretty well. The second one hadn't done as well, but I was really proud of it. But I was also gutted, and it was the classic, you know, second shit. So I wouldn't say despondent, but I was a little sort of, you know, deflated and a bit cheesed off.
Yeah.
Whatever. So feeling sorry for myself. So I think the next year, so I was floundering around. I'd lost confidence creatively. I was in a bit of a, I was in a bit of a belly flop. But so I had the DVD of 20,000 Days on Earth, and there was the extras section, and it was talking about recreating Nick's office on the set, right? So there was like a pile of all the books that he had on his desk, and I was like, oh, Jesus, I wonder what books are on Nick's desk. I'll freeze frame this and have a look. There on the bottom of the pile is my fucking novel, John the Revelator. And I'm like, now you can go on. Like, there's your fucking post.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about people and actions like that something that's seemingly innocuous to, you know, 20 million people, but for you, it speaks and says what you need, you know, like that's, yeah, it's, I love that that the book has made you think about these things, because I think the greatest compliment you can give a book is that it's made you read your own story into it and see your own things. I think, and I think that's all. I mean, you know, what I was hoping would happen with is that, because it's not a series of famous people or whatever, you know, it's like goes from the, you know, people who unknown people. It's people who've kind of moved me, and people who've I cross paths with all sorts of people, you know, and every day there's these little things of awe and wonder, from the guy that fixes your shoes, you know, to the the person that just does something that blows your mind, you know, an act of generosity that you can't believe. And yeah, I think I like that you're thinking about your own relationship to your things, looking at this, because I mean that's kind of what I'd hope for this, you know, that the story is. I think it's where when I get to. I see that the actual story of the gum has taken over, and these people are like, I don't know who Nina Simone is, but fuck, a piece of gum, wow, you know, and that for me is a beautiful moment, you know.
I remember Nick lamenting the couple of years where he started drafting songs on a computer instead of in hard copy, and he lost all documentation of the evolution of the songs at that period. And to me, there's something in that about the importance of objects. Not that you have to become a hoarder, you can clear house every so often, but there's something about the accumulations of a life in small objects having this kind
I can walk into a charity shop and see a spoon collection and get really moved, because I know that some person has spent their whole life with them sitting in a little cupboard. You know, there's pride and joy that, you know I bought spoons back from my first trip overseas from my grandmother because I knew she liked them, you know. So these little teaspoons, you know, with like Edinburgh Castle or something on, you know, or you know, Filipino fucking flop house or something, you know, like you kind of, you know, you see these little collections, and you know when you see them there that like for somebody they were just like everything, you know, like and then outside of their environment, you know, they're just like kind of 50p a pop kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. My final thought, you're talking about ordinary people that having as much import as, you know, artists or famous people. I keep thinking about the geezer who first showed you how to put salt on your porridge. He's like,
I've taught that to my kids.
That's important.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you know, like I'll tell you that when I literally arrived at this whiskey distillery, and I'll never forget this. I kind of thought, oh, I'll make some porridge, you know, and I made it. This guy just like put a mouthful in and just spat it out, and he goes, "Didn't you put any salt in the porridge?" And I went, "Salt?" And he goes, "You can't feed a Scotsman salt without porridge without salt," like that. And he was really fucking pissed off, you know. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then he showed me you had to put a pinch of salt in to get the oats fluffed up.
That's a life lesson.
Yeah. Well, I taught my kids that.